Hi, this is Michelle Sam from Sammy Wong's Kitchen, and today I am going to be showing you how to make some really easy and tasty chili. It's hard for me to even think of chili when it's 80 degrees out in October, but that's what I'm going to be doing today, and I am going to be also showing you how to use that with the Sammy Wong's all-purpose seasoning. A few weeks ago, I actually went on a women's retreat with my church, and I made this chili for the ladies there, and it was so well received, and I realized I did not have the recipe on my blog. So for all you ladies out there, this is for you. All right, for the chili, what we need obviously is ground meat, and I'm going to be using ground turkey. You can use ground beef or ground chicken. I have ground turkey, and besides the ground turkey, you will need some cans of beans. So I have a can of kidney beans and I have a can of black beans. In addition to that, I also have 2 cans of diced tomatoes and a can of tomato paste. Besides the canned goods, we do need some fresh ingredients, and that is an onion that we will be dicing, celery, and carrots. And I'm not going to give you quantities here. You can look at the actual recipe because it really depends on how much you're going to be making, and that will determine your quantities. So that is actually for your chili. Once your chili is done, you do need some accompaniments. And what I like doing is having some fresh chives and also some yogurt or sour cream. I prefer yogurt because it's a little healthier and less fattening. And then also some shredded cheese and the corn. Now this frozen corn I actually put in right before serving, but it really depends on the quantity. If you're making for a large group, you don't want to be putting all your frozen corn into your chili because that's just going to make your chili cold. But the nice thing about this is that if you do it right before serving, you just want the corn to be cooked but not really soft, so it gives it a little bit of crunch. I do love crunch in my chili, so one of the things that I like eating it with are the corn chips, the Frito corn chips. So that is really good. I did mention this earlier, but you would be needing your Sammy Wong's all-purpose seasoning and a little olive oil to brown the meat. You also need a little bit of water depending on the consistency of your chili. This chili can be made either in the conventional way, which would be to use your stovetop for browning the meat and the mirepoix, or you can also use a slow cooker in addition to the stovetop, or just cook it in a Instapot where you can actually saute and slow cook at the same time. You can also pressure cook it if you are pressed for time, but that is completely up to you. So if you want to do a chili with a pressure cooker, just push the chili button and you'll be all set to go. But this is really for those people who don't have an Instapot and want to make it the conventional way, either completely on the stove or in a slow cooker. So let's get started. All right, so first we're going to dice and chop our vegetables. Dice the onion. And the key to dicing the onion is when you dice the onion, don't cut it completely to the end, but just leave part of the onion that is uncut so that your entire slices here all are intact, so that once you dice it the other way, it's just easier and your slices aren't falling apart. So here is your diced onion, and now I'm going to cut and dice my carrots. And The recipe for 2 pounds of ground meat calls for 3 medium carrots, but since these are really small, I'm going to be using 7 carrots. You need about 200 grams of carrots. These are organic. I do like peeling the carrots, and that is because I just feel that carrots with the skin don't look appealing in a stew. It's not necessary, especially if they're organic, but make sure you rinse them well. And basically what you do want is about 1/2 inch dice. This is a little big, but I can get the 1/2 inch dice just by cutting it in half. Some carrots might be a little larger, where you're going to have to cut it in actual quarters, but the optimum size is about a 1/2 inch dice. And then for the celery, the same thing. You want about a 1/2 inch slice, but depending on the actual ribs of your celery. If they are really wide, you can just cut them in half. Okay. And I'm going to cut the celeries with 1/2 inch widths. And that's all your prep that's needed in terms of cutting. Besides that, we're going to have to open all our cans. So let's just go ahead and do that. Now, for the beans, they have a carbohydrate contributes towards gas, because when beans are boiled, all those polysaccharides are entering the water. In order to minimize the gasiness, we are going to drain the beans and rinse them. So let's go to the stove and start to brown our ground meat, as well as to make our mirepoix that is going to form the base of our chili. In a skillet, I'm going to pretty much brown my meat. And the reason for browning the meat is when you brown protein, it creates something called a Maillard reaction. And the Maillard reaction just gives the meat extra depth of flavor, as well as browns it. Not that you'll notice that much in the chili, but it'll also allow you to remove the extra fat. So in case you get a meat with is a higher fat content, it's not too much of a problem, because you're actually going to be removing most of the fat once it browns, and too much fat is not very good for you. So I'm going to let this brown, and in another pan I am going to start working on the mirepoix, and this is going to be actually the pot that's going to be used to slow cook in. So here's my pot. I'm going to put my oil in, my onions, celery, and my carrots. Just allow this to soften and the onions to caramelize. Here is my meat. I'll continue to break it down so that you'll have crumbles rather than patty. You see some parts here, the Maillard reaction is taking place. You can see it's brown. Cook the rest of it until, well, release some of the sugars. Continue to crumble up your meat. And in order to brown the meat, it's better to use the widest pot you have available, so that the water or the juice can evaporate and brown the meat. If you have a very small pot, just end up boiling your meat, and the evaporation is not as fast. So that's just another trick in cooking. Just want the water to evaporate, and once the water evaporates, then it'll create enough heat for the fat to start coming out from the actual meat. This particular ground turkey is only 7% fat, so it's pretty lean. I'm not sure if there's going to be a lot of fat that's actually going to come out as rendered fat. I would highly recommend, if you do have a fat content of about 15%, that the fat that you see here, you drain it. And what I like to do is drain it into an empty can and then throw that away. We don't have much fat here. We're just going to pour all this turkey right into our vegetables. Okay, once your meat is in your vegetables, we can add the rest of the ingredients. We're going to put in a tomato paste, our cans of diced tomato, our Sammy Wong's all-purpose seasoning, and our beans. And then give it a good stir. And then fill a can with water and rinse all your tomato cans, and then pour it into your pot and clean this up so we don't waste any tomato paste. Okay, there we go. That's pretty clean now. And this is pretty much your chili. But one thing that I forgot to mention and is very important in terms of the ingredients are 2 bay leaves. So if you were doing this in a slow cooker, you would just transfer this into a slow cooker and set it on high for 4 hours. Or if you're doing it in an Instapot, set it for the chili setting. But here is a complete stove recipe, and what I'm going to be doing is bringing it to a boil and then putting it on a very low simmer for 2 hours. Now that you can see that it's boiling, I'm going to turn it down and simmer for 2 hours. And the reason I'm simmering it for half the amount of time as in a slow cooker is that the slow cooker never really gets to boiling, and it takes quite a bit of time to get to that temperature. So here I'm quickly putting it to a boil and then simmering it. After 2 hours of slow cooking, taste the chili to make sure it has enough spice. And you can add more all-purpose seasoning if needed. Gonna try this. Perfect. And what I'm going to do is right before serving, I'm going to add my frozen corn to the chili. Now, this is completely optional if you like corn. Just adds a little sweetness and a little crunch. However, you can get the crunch in your chili by serving it with corn chips, which I absolutely love. Here's your chili ready to be served. More recipes can be found on sammywongsKitchen.com or social media. If you found this video helpful, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thanks!